Hi everyone, welcome to week 5 of our May videos. This week I'm going to talk about some life skills that you might want to incorporate into your homeschool life. And as you get into the spring months and it gets closer to summer, you may be finishing up some of your core subjects and you might have some extra time, or you might just need a break throughout the week. Change it up a little bit right before your summer break if you take off for the summer. So I just came up with a few things that I thought would be really important to teach your kids, different life skills that would be beneficial for them. So the first one is kind of like a whole money thing. So you're going to want, again, this is going to depend on their age, you're going to want to teach them how to balance a checkbook. I know that's kind of an old skill. A lot of people just rely on the bank apps and everything that we have now, but I really feel like it's an important thing that you are still doing your due diligence to make sure that the computer isn't glitchy or whatever and you lose like $300 because you're not balancing your checkbook. So I think it's an important skill for everyone to know. Whether or not they choose to practice it as an adult would be their choice, but at least you know that they know how to do it. So balancing a checkbook, all kinds of things about the bank. If you take them with you when you're going to the bank, make sure you are explaining what you're doing and how things are happening. Depending on your banking situation, you may be able to even have the teller, or depending on how busy they are, maybe explain some things to them. When I used to take my girls when they were little, that they would fill out like a deposit slips, just pretend and hand it to the teller, and she would like pretend on her computer. But we were like in a small town, so that was fine. Probably not every bank would be willing to do that, but just get them used to the fact of like using banks and saving money and allocating certain things to be spent when they get older and they get their first paycheck, that they shouldn't be spending everything that they make, that they should be saving some, saving up for some kind of goal like a car or college or whatever it is, saving for a rainy day. Those are all things that are not promoted in our society. So it's really important that we instill that in our kids, that they do that. Credit cards, debit cards versus cash. There are pros and cons to both. Make sure your kids understand those, especially as they're getting older, that they understand what's happening when they swipe that plastic, because according to Dave Ramsey, it is different when you're spending with plastic versus cash. It doesn't hurt as much with the plastic. So make sure that they are just aware of that so they don't get themselves into a lot of trouble using credit cards when they don't have the funds to pay the bill at the end of the month. And then we are believers, so we believe very strongly in tithing. So that has been something that we have worked with our girls ever since they were little. We have 3 different piggy banks for them. There's a saving jar, a spending jar, and a giving jar. And then when we go to church, they pull from their giving jar to put in their tithe thing for their tithes and offering for their kids' class. So money, make sure your kids are comfortable with money and make sure they understand its benefits and its drawbacks if you're not good with managing your money. Because if you don't really think about what you're doing with your money and you're not budgeting and you're not doing all those things, you can get into a lot of trouble pretty quickly. So you don't want your kids to end up that way. That's a really good life skill to teach them. Another thing we like to do is menu planning as a family. So asking for input. Again, if the kids are putting input in, hopefully they're going to be more apt to try and eat the food. So meal plan as a family, make your grocery list. You can involve your kids in that, have them look at the recipe, the ingredients, and they can read them off to you. So you add them to your list. They can be part of the grocery shopping. So then you're taking that list and you're buying the ingredients, or if you order it online, however you get your groceries, and then actually baking the meal. As your kids get older, I've heard of assigning one kid the responsibility of making dinner that one night every week. So Tuesday night your oldest, Wednesday night the next oldest, however that works for you. But our oldest is 9, so we haven't started that yet, but I am interested in how that all works out. I think it's a great idea. I just don't know how that all will play out. So it's on the back burner for now for us, but if your kids are a little bit older, I think they can definitely make a meal, even if it's just pizza, just to get them in that mode of being responsible and that there's a meal coming and that not everyone is going to have a mom or a dad to give them something to eat, especially when they get older and they're in college. They've got to kind of plan ahead, and that is not just boom, you sit down at the table and the food is there. Like, there's a whole process that you have to plan for. So all things food. The next thing that I thought would be fun, especially with gardens and things, you can't, if you have a garden or even if you just have plants in your house, teaching them the skills of how to take care of a plant, what kind of soil to use, how often you water, how to check the plant to make sure that it's healthy. I'm still learning this, so I learn this along with my kids. Sometimes I forget to water, sometimes I overwater. So there's lots of resources out there that you can look into. Also, canning is a great thing to do if you have a garden and you have a surplus of vegetables or fruit and you want to can. You have some startup costs because you have to get the big pot for the canning and then the jars and things, and make sure you know what you're doing as far as what the whole process works, because if you don't can properly, that can make you really sick. But that whole process of growing your own food and then storing it for later and the canning is really cool. We like to do applesauce because our girls love applesauce. So that's a great skill for them to have if they choose to use it as an adult. Another thing is kind of on the craftier side. So teaching them how to sew, even if it's just sewing a button on a blouse or something. It's a very nice skill to have that not everyone has, and it takes a little bit of practice, but it's not real hard. If you want to whip out the sewing machine and teach them that, that's awesome too. My 9-year-old likes to help me with some projects on our sewing machine, but at the bare minimum, I think everybody should know how to sew a button on a shirt. Any kind of crafting that you want to do is a very great way for them to release their creativity and creating something, whether you want to whip out the paints and have them paint, or if you want to give them some beads and have them making jewelry. It just allows them some time to express themselves and create something beautiful. Woodworking is another area that is not my gift. My husband is very gifted in that, so I thought it would be neat to kind of involve them in that as far as like basic tools, you know, like a hammer and a screwdriver and a drill, how to operate them, what you need, what kind of hardware you need. And then it would be fun to make something together, like a birdhouse or something very simple. There's lots of different very basic plans that you can find online that would be fun to do as like a father-daughter or father-son project. Just a lot of math goes into that and a lot of patience, because you have to measure. I always say measure twice, cut once, measuring and then making sure that you're cutting correctly and attaching the pieces where they're supposed to go. So that would be a fun project. Lots of learning that they probably aren't going to realize they're learning, but it's always fun to sneak that in. Another one that we like to teach our girls is first aid or caring for your body. We believe that God designed our body to be able to heal itself given the proper things. So we use essential oils a lot. I use homeopathy a lot, different tinctures and things. So we have a whole part of our pantry that is devoted to that, and they know to go there to get those things. So I hope that was helpful for you. I hope you got some tips, and if you have some other ideas, drop them in the comments below.